They told me I wasn't strong enough to heal an alpha. But when the commander of the North bled out on my table, I didn't ask for permission. I said, I can fix this. He laughed until he couldn't look away, until my song burned through the darkness, eating him alive. A disgraced healer. A dying alpha. One forbidden bond that could destroy or save their world. Beat. And it all starts the moment she says, I can fix this. They always said healers were born holding the pulse of life between their hands. That their gift wasn't just magic, but mercy made flesh. But no one ever warned Ira of the silence that followed when the pulse stopped anyway, when the life you tried to save slipped away, taking your purpose with it. The silence had followed her for 3 years. 3 years since the night the royal consort of Altherin died beneath her trembling hands. 3 years since the council stripped her of her healer's sigil, branded her throat with the mark of failure, and exiled her beyond the glittering spires of the capital. Out here, past the city walls where the sky was gray with smoke and the air smelled of iron and damp earth, no one cared who she used to be. No one bowed to a healer fallen from grace. The outer district of Greymore was where the broken went to be forgotten. And Ira had fit right in. She kept her clinic small, a 2-room shack sandwiched between a smith's forge and a tannery, where the air was heavy with herbs, ash, and regret. Her patients were miners, factory workers, sometimes the occasional soldier too poor or too ashamed to visit an alpha medic. They didn't ask for her past, and she didn't offer it. She had built her exile from quiet routine, grind the herbs, stitch the wounds, sleep when she remembered to. It was simple, predictable. Until the morning the soldiers came. It began with the door slamming open, so hard it rattled the shelves. Old Matra, her assistant, a wiry beta woman with more wrinkles than sense, stumbled in, pale as linen. Ira, she wheezed. We've got trouble. Ira didn't look up from the mortar and pestle she was working. If it's another mine collapse, send them to the guild infirmary. I'm out of burnroot. Matra shook her head violently. Not miners. Alphas. That single word froze the air. Ira's hand stilled, pestle mid-turn. Then send them to the Alpha ward. They don't like our kind touching theirs. They already did. The ward refused them. That got her attention. Ira set the pestle down and turned slowly. Refuse? Matra's lined face tightened. Said the patients cursed. They won't risk it. Through the thin wall, Ira could hear it now. The labored, rasping breaths of a dying man. The low, guttural growls that came when instinct fought the pull of the grave. The unmistakable sound of an alpha trying not to beg. Every part of her screamed to stay put. She had learned the hard way that helping the wrong alpha could ruin more than her career. But then Matra whispered, Please, Ira. Just look. And Ira, against her better judgment, obeyed. She stepped into the front room, and the world stopped. The alpha on her table looked more beast than man. His body was a map of old scars and new wounds. Claw marks raked across his side. Blood soaked the bandages at his torso. But it was the black webbing beneath his skin that made her breath catch, veins dark as tar, pulsing with an otherworldly light. The corruption. Shadow taint. Ira took one involuntary step closer. That can't be. It is, rasped the soldier at his side, a young beta, armor cracked and face smeared with soot. The others wouldn't even touch him. They were right not to, Ira murmured, eyes scanning the spreading darkness. That's no ordinary wound. That's dark fire venom. It feeds on power. The stronger the alpha, the faster it kills. The beta's hands shook. You have to help him. He saved my entire unit. Then he's a fool, Ira said, though her voice softened despite herself. There's nothing anyone can. Her words died when the alpha stirred. His eyes opened, gold shot through with heat, a molten amber that seemed to look through her rather than at her. For a heartbeat, her chest forgot how to rise. Let her go, he growled, voice gravelly but commanding. The beta instantly released Ira's arm. Commander, please. Commander? The name scraped her throat as realization hit. She'd seen that face once before, from a distance, in the great hall of the capital, when she stood trial. His was the signature stamped on her exile papers. The council's executioner in uniform. Cale Draven, Matra whispered from behind her. The Iron Fong himself. Ira laughed, bitter and breathless. Of course it's you. The gods have a cruel sense of humor. Even dying, Cale managed to smirk. Didn't think they'd send me to the healer I condemned. Condemned? She shot back. You signed my death. And yet here I am, in your care. He coughed, blood dark on his lips. Irony's a bitch. Ira turned to Matra. Get them out. All of them. Ira.
Now.
The old woman hesitated, then grabbed the beta by the arm and dragged him outside, leaving Ira and the Alpha alone in a silence thick with unspoken history. Cale's breathing grew harsher. The black veins were spreading. You're just going to watch me die? She folded her arms. You deserve worse. Maybe, he said, voice rough. But I'd rather die by your hands than theirs. For some reason, that struck her harder than it should have. Don't romanticize this, she said sharply. You made your choice when you sided with the council. And you made yours when you failed the queen. Her hand twitched toward her scarred throat before she could stop it. The mark of failure, burned there as punishment, throbbed faintly at the reminder. Ira turned away, fury and shame warring in her chest. You don't know what happened, she said quietly. I know enough, Cale rasped. You sang her to death. The words were a blade twisting in an old wound. She told herself she was done bleeding from it. Apparently, she'd lied. Ira grabbed a towel and tossed it toward him. Then consider this my penance. He frowned. Meaning, I can fix this. Cale let out a strangled laugh, half pained, half incredulous. You? The disgraced healer who murdered her own queen. I said I can fix this, Ira repeated, voice cold as steel. I didn't say you'd like how. He stared at her for a long moment, something unreadable flickering behind his fever-glazed eyes. Then, slowly, he nodded. Then, do your worst, Songbird. The name, the one she hadn't heard since before the trial, hit her like a forgotten melody. For a second, she saw another version of herself. Young, hopeful, unmarked. Then she rolled up her sleeves and reached for the bowl of moonwater. The storm outside broke as she began to work, thunder answering her heartbeat. The storm raged outside, wind rattling the shutters as if the night itself demanded entrance. The lantern light flickered across the walls of the clinic, painting Cale Draven in a dance of gold and shadow. Even near death, the Alpha radiated a dangerous kind of gravity, an intensity that made the small room feel smaller. Ira ignored it. She'd faced death before. Death was predictable. Alphas, though, they were not. She gathered her tools with mechanical precision. The basin of moonwater shimmered faintly blue, illegal and unregistered. The pestle ground the feverfew root into paste. Each movement helped steady her hands, helped quiet the storm inside her chest that wasn't caused by thunder. You should know, she said finally, breaking the silence. Dark fire venom feeds on pride. Cale's eyes flicked open, the faintest spark of amusement in his pain-glazed gaze. Then it's fitting. I've always had too much. Ira didn't smile. If I'm to purge it, you'll need to lower your barriers. He frowned. Barriers? Every alpha builds them. Energy walls that protect your core. It's instinct. Keeps healers from influencing you. But those walls are feeding the poison. I don't lower them, he said flatly. Ever. She straightened, crossing her arms. Then you'll die proud and poisoned. Cale's laugh came out like a growl. You really are as insolent as the rumors said. Ira turned back to her herbs. And you're exactly as arrogant as I remember. When she approached him again, her tone was all business. I'll need to touch the wound directly. Do I get a choice? He asked.
No.
Her fingers brushed his bare side, and the world jolted. The contact burned, not physically, but somewhere deeper, like two opposite currents colliding. His power met hers, testing, prodding, challenging. The darkness inside him stirred in response, veins twitching, as if aware of her presence. Ira closed her eyes and began to hum. The sound started low, a vibration rather than a melody. It wasn't the controlled, serene songs healers used in the capital. This was older, raw and haunting, the kind of tune that lingered in bones. Her grandmother had called it the whisper between worlds. The kind of song the gods themselves might envy. The black veins writhed under her palm. Kale's breath hitched, muscles tensing against the table. What is that? Quiet, she murmured, keeping her focus. I'm talking to it. To the poison? To the pain. He swore under his breath, but didn't stop her. The darkness pushed back, trying to sink deeper. Ira adjusted her tone, weaving sound and energy into one. Her aura brushed against his core, then hit the impenetrable wall of alpha dominance. It was like singing to a mountain. She grit her teeth. Lower them, she hissed. Kale's jaw tightened.
No.
Then you'll be dead before dawn. He turned his head, sweat glistening across his temples. I don't trust you. You don't have to, she said. You just have to live long enough to regret it. Ira pulled back slightly, her breath trembling. She had spent years suppressing her gift, smothering it beneath layers of shame. Now, as it flared through her veins again, it hurt, like reopening a wound that never healed. But beneath the pain was something else, something sharp and electric.
Power.
It wanted to be used. And so, for the first time in years, she stopped fighting it. She let it flow. Her song shifted, rising from a whisper to a thread of light. The air trembled. Dust motes lifted, swirling around them like fireflies. Kale's eyes widened. What, by the gods? Breathe, she commanded, pressing harder. He gasped, his body arching as the black veins began to pull away from his heart, retracting toward her palm like ink in reverse. The corruption screamed as it died, an unholy shriek only she could hear. It thrashed, fought, clawed, but Ira's will was relentless. Her voice grew louder, a crescendo of defiance and sorrow that filled every inch of the room. When it was done, she fell backward, catching herself against the counter. Her body shook. The room spun. Kale lay motionless, chest rising shallowly. For a heartbeat, fear clenched her stomach. Then he inhaled, a steady, clean breath. The black veins were gone, replaced by faint silver traces fading even as she watched. Ira exhaled. Relief tasted bitter. You're alive, she murmured. Kale's eyes opened slowly. That sounded almost disappointed. She scowled. Don't flatter yourself. He pushed himself up on one elbow, grimacing as he studied her. How did you do that?
No alpha heal.
Could have, she interrupted. Alpha healing relies on dominance, forcing flesh to obey. Shadow venom feeds on that. You have to persuade it to leave. He studied her face with unnerving focus. You persuaded death. Ira turned away, uncomfortable. You should rest. The corruption could return. He didn't listen. Why did you really help me? She froze. Because I'm a healer. That's not an answer. Then don't ask questions you're not ready to hear. Kale swung his legs over the side of the table, muscles flexing under torn bandages. You risked your life for me. I risked it for the challenge. He smirked, a flash of teeth. Liar. Ira glared at him, but her retort died when she noticed the faint shimmer linking their hands, an invisible tether pulsing faintly with light. What is that? Kale murmured. She stepped back quickly. Residual energy bond. Side effect. Side effect of what? Of saving your ungrateful life, she snapped. His smirk deepened. Feels more like a chain. Ira's patience snapped. You'll recover by morning. Then you and your beta can crawl back to whatever battlefield spat you out. He tilted his head. You think I'm leaving after what you just did? Yes, she said firmly. Because the longer you stay, the more trouble follows. Maybe trouble's overdue, he murmured. The way he said it made her pulse skip. He was watching her, not like a commander assessing a subordinate, but like a man studying something that didn't fit in his world. Rest, she said sharply. Or I'll sedate you. You could try. She rolled her eyes, but when she turned to leave, His next words stopped her cold. I remember you, Kale said quietly. From the palace. You used to sing in the moon gardens at night. Ira's breath caught. No one had mentioned that since before the trial. Before her voice was silenced by shame. That was another life, she said. Kale's gaze dropped to the mark on her throat, the faint scar of her punishment. They took your song. No, she whispered. They took my place. My song survived. Their eyes met, something unspoken sparking in the air between them. Then Kale smiled faintly, a rare softness breaking through his hardened face. Good, he said, because I think I'm going to need it again. Outside, thunder cracked like an omen. Ira didn't sleep that night. She told herself it was because she had to watch his vitals, that she needed to ensure the corruption wouldn't return. But the truth was simpler and far more dangerous. She couldn't stop listening to the sound of his breathing, steady and alive, and wondering what cruel twist of fate had brought him to her door. Morning crept into gray more slow and gray, filtering through the slats of Ira's shutters. The storm had broken some time before dawn, leaving the streets slick with rain and the air smelling faintly of iron and wet ash. Inside the clinic, everything was unnaturally still, the kind of quiet that came after too much noise, too much fear. Ira sat at the table in the adjoining room, a cup of cold tea untouched in front of her. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. No matter how many times she flexed them, she could still feel the echo of his pulse under her skin, the strange rhythm of an alpha's life intertwined with hers. The bond had faded through the night, but not vanished. She could still sense him, a dull, steady hum at the edge of her awareness. It felt like someone had left a door open between them, and she hated that she didn't want to close it. A creak sounded from behind her. You're awake, she said, not turning. Kale Draven filled the doorway like a storm cloud barely contained in human form. His shirt hung open where she'd cut it to reach the wound, exposing healed flesh that had once been torn and blackened. Only faint silver tracings remained, glinting faintly in the light. You fixed me, he said simply. Completely. Ira looked at the floor. You sound disappointed. Impressed, actually. He stepped closer, slow and deliberate. I was dying. Every alpha medic in the district said so. Flattering as that is, you should thank my illegal herbs and poor sense of self-preservation, not me. Kale ignored the jab. Why use moon water? It's banned. So are half my patients, Ira said dryly. And they deserve to live too. He studied her face, expression unreadable. They said you were reckless, that you let emotion cloud your healing. And you believed them. I believe what I see, he said quietly. And right now, I see someone who did the impossible. Ira scoffed. Don't romanticize it, Commander. I didn't do it for you. Then why? His tone was gentle but insistent. She wanted to say she didn't know. That her instincts had taken over. But the truth was uglier. Because I had to prove something, she admitted. That my hands could still save instead of destroy. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Kale nodded slowly, the kind of acknowledgement that didn't need words. You should eat, she said abruptly, turning away. Your body needs time to. I don't rest well in strange places, he interrupted. And I can't stay long. Ira froze halfway to the cabinet. Good. I mean to repay my debt first. She turned back, wary.
Debt.
You saved my life. By old law, I owe you a blood favor. Her heart stumbled in her chest. That law's been obsolete for decades. Doesn't mean I stopped believing in it. You don't strike me as the sentimental type, she muttered. He smiled faintly. You'd be surprised. Ira crossed her arms. I don't want your favor. Too bad, Kale said. You've got it. I don't need. Everyone needs something, healer, he interrupted softly. Even you. Ira hated that his words dug under her skin like a splinter. What I need, she snapped, is for you to leave before the city guards find an alpha commander fraternizing with a disgraced Omega. His expression darkened. They'd arrest you? They'd kill me, she corrected. And you'd lose your shiny reputation. Everyone wins. Kale's golden eyes narrowed. That's how you see yourself? A ghost waiting to be buried again. She opened her mouth, then closed it. There was no answer that didn't taste like defeat. He moved closer, so close she could feel the heat radiating off him. Tell me something, Ira. What really happened that night? The question sliced through her composure. Don't. I want to understand. No, she said sharply. You want to justify. He didn't back away. You were the most gifted healer in the royal halls. The queen herself trusted you. And then suddenly you. She died. The words tore from her throat before she could stop them. She died screaming, and my song made it worse. Silence. Only the rain outside filled the space between them. Ira's breath came ragged. She hadn't said those words aloud in years. She'd buried them under duty, anger, exile, but Cale's presence had ripped open every wall she'd built. He said softly, "The reports said you panicked." She laughed bitterly. Of course they did. Easier to blame the fragile Omega than admit someone designed a poison made to twist healing into harm. Cale's head jerked up. Designed. The toxin wasn't natural. It reacted to my song, used my own energy against her. Ira touched the faint scar at her throat. That's what this is. A reminder that I broke the sacred balance. Cale's jaw tightened. You didn't. You weren't there. I read every report, he said. But none of them mentioned that. Because the council buried it, she snapped. The truth would have caused panic. Admitting someone created an anti-healing weapon? They'd rather make me the villain. Cale's expression darkened with something fierce and dangerous. Who did it? If I knew, they'd already be dead, Ira said quietly. Now please drop it. But he didn't. He moved closer, lowering his voice. Then let me help you find out. Ira blinked, startled. What? I owe you my life. Let me use it for something that matters. She stared at him, searching his face for mockery. There was none, only conviction. This isn't your fight, she said. It became mine the moment you saved me. She wanted to argue, to push him away again. But for the first time since her exile, the idea of not being alone in this war of ghosts felt tempting. Her voice softened. You don't even know what you're offering. Cale smiled faintly, a crack of sunlight through storm clouds. Then, I suppose I'll learn. Ira turned back toward her cabinet, pretending to busy herself with jars of herbs. Her heartbeat betrayed her, hammering loud in her chest. Fine, she said after a long moment. You want to repay your debt? Then stay out of trouble long enough for me to find what's left of the poison's trail. Cale inclined his head slightly. As you wish, healer. When he said it, it didn't sound like mockery. It sounded like a vow. Later that night, when Cale finally slept on the narrow cot near the fire, Ira sat alone by the window. Rain whispered against the glass, and her reflection stared back, gray eyes haunted, hands trembling with too many memories. For the first time in years, she felt something foreign creeping into her chest. Not peace, not forgiveness, hope. And that terrified her more than anything. By the following afternoon, the storm had broken entirely. The streets of Greymore glistened under watery sunlight, though the air still carried the scent of wet ash and old fear. Inside the clinic, the faint hiss of the brewing kettle filled the silence that stretched between Ira and Cale. The Alpha had healed faster than anyone she'd ever seen, his wounds closing cleanly overnight, his energy already rebuilding itself like wildfire after drought. Typical. Even his recovery defied her expectations. He sat by the window, broad shoulders dwarfing the chair, watching the world outside with a soldier's alert stillness. His posture said rest, but his eyes said readiness. Ira couldn't stand it. You're supposed to be in bed, she said without looking up from the bandages she was sorting. I've been in bed all morning, Cale replied. Your cot's too small for a wolf my size. Then maybe next time, bleed somewhere else. He almost smiled. I'll try to arrange my mortal wounds to fit your furniture. Her head snapped up, glare sharp enough to cut steel. You think this is funny? Cale's golden eyes softened, the teasing fading to something more serious. No, he said quietly. I think you're extraordinary. Ira froze mid-motion. Don't. I mean it, he said, leaning forward. I've seen healers mend torn limbs, revive hearts stopped cold. But what you did last night. He gestured vaguely to his chest. That was different. The poison was eating through my aura. It should have taken me hours ago. Maybe the poison just got bored, she muttered, turning away. You sang to it. Her fingers trembled over the gauze. That's not a technique. That's instinct. Then your instincts are stronger than most alpha's training. She could feel him watching her, the weight of it pressing against her skin. Every instinct screamed to deflect, to rebuild her walls before he saw too much. Instead, she asked, what were you doing near the border anyway? His expression changed, a flicker of something grim. Reconnaissance. The Shadowlands have been stirring again. Our patrol found 3 corrupted bodies outside the perimeter ward. Shadow taint? She asked, throat tightening. He nodded. But this was different. Stronger.
Organized.
Someone's controlling it. The tea kettle shrieked, cutting through the moment. Ira busied herself pouring it, though her mind was already racing. Controlled corruption meant a conscious source. A creator. And that could only mean one thing. Someone had rediscovered the lost alchemy that had killed the queen. She handed Kale a steaming cup. You think whoever made the poison is still alive? I don't think, Kale said, taking it. I know. Ira sat opposite him, the fragile piece of the clinic suddenly feeling like glass ready to shatter. If you're right, then you walking around Greymore is an open invitation for another attack. Let them come. He sipped his tea, unconcerned. You're impossible. I've been told. By people who live to regret it. Most of them, he said with a hint of humor. Then, softer. You sound worried. I'm pragmatic, she corrected. If you die again, I'll have to explain it. He grinned faintly. To who? You're exiled. The words were blunt, but there was no malice in them. Only truth. Iris stared into her cup, steam curling upward. Exactly. Something in her tone made Kale's expression darken. You can't stay in this hole forever. It's safer here. For who? He asked quietly. You, or the world? Her heart stuttered. What's that supposed to mean? It means, he said, setting his cup down, you've spent 3 years punishing yourself for something that wasn't your fault. You think hiding makes it right. It doesn't. Her pulse thudded in her throat. And what do you know about guilt? Enough, he said simply. I sent men to die believing it was strategy. I watched kingdoms fall because I followed orders instead of my gut. We all bleed the same under our armor, Ira. Her breath caught at the sound of her name on his tongue. It shouldn't matter. But somehow it did. Before she could find words, a knock rattled the door. Sharp.
Urgent.
Matra burst in, out of breath. Ira, soldiers. From the capital. Ira's stomach dropped. How many? 2 wagons. They're asking for you by name. Kale was on his feet instantly, his presence filling the room like thunderclouds. They followed me. No, Ira said, thinking fast. If it were about you, they'd bring healers, not wagons. Outside, boots struck mud in perfect rhythm, the disciplined march of trained Alpha guards. Ira peeked through the curtain and saw them, silver crest armor, imperial colors, and a familiar insignia emblazoned on their chests. The royal crest. Matra whispered. Do we run? No, Ira said, straightening her spine. We face them. The door swung open before she could reach it. 3 soldiers entered, dripping rainwater onto her floor. The one in front removed his helm, revealing a face lined by war and authority. Ira Vale, he said, voice clipped. By decree of the Council of Healing, you are summoned to answer for unauthorized practice of magic beyond your designation. Kale's growl vibrated the air. She saved my life. The commander glanced at him and froze mid-sentence. Recognition flared in his eyes. Commander Draven, we thought you were dead. Almost, Kale said coolly, thanks to your council's incompetence. The soldier hesitated, thrown off balance. Sir, the council. Can wait, Kale snapped. She's under my protection. Ira's heart lurched. Kale. Silence, he ordered, but not unkindly. You're not taking her anywhere. The lead soldier stiffened. We have orders. And I outrank your orders, Kale said. Unless you plan to explain to the War Council why their commander was left to rot poisoned on the border. The man hesitated, jaw tight. This isn't over. Kale's golden gaze hardened.
No.
It's just beginning. The soldiers withdrew reluctantly, their boots splashing through puddles as they left. When the door finally shut, the silence returned like a held breath. Ira turned on him. You just made an enemy of the council. I already had plenty. She exhaled, sinking into a chair. They'll come back. Next time, they won't knock. Kale leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Then we'll be gone before they do. Her eyes snapped up. You think I'm letting you face this alone? I think you're a fool, she said, but her voice was trembling now. Not with anger, with something far more dangerous. Where exactly do you plan to go? Back to the capital, he said. If the poison and the corruption are linked, the truth starts there. Ira stared at him. The capital exiled me. If I set foot near its gates, then you'll have an escort. He straightened, determination hardening his features. You healed me, Ira Vale. Now, it's my turn to protect you. Her heart hammered. The words shouldn't have meant anything, but something in the way he said them, steady, absolute, made the walls she'd built around herself tremble. I don't need your protection, she said weakly. Maybe not, he replied. But I owe you more than my life. I owe you the truth. And as he met her eyes, she saw something in his, a reflection of the same darkness that haunted her nights.
Guilt. Pain.
And the faint, flickering spark of something she hadn't dared feel in years. Hope. The dawn that followed felt like an omen, pale, cold, and far too quiet. Ira stood on the edge of Greymoor's main road, a single satchel slung over her shoulder, staring at the gray horizon where the capital's spires hid beyond the fog. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, to retreat into the safety of her anonymity. For 3 years she had built her exile into armor. Now Kale Draven was asking her to strip it away. Behind her, Kale adjusted the reins of a battered carriage borrowed from Matra's brother. The horses snorted, restless under his heavy hand. His movements were calm, methodical, the same control she had seen when he fought the venom in his veins. She hated that it reassured her. You can still change your mind, she said quietly. Kale glanced up. And leave you to face the council's hounds alone? I don't think so. They'll arrest me on sight. Not if they see me first. He tightened the straps on his vambrace. Besides, the council won't risk touching a commander of the Northern Legion without proof of insubordination. Ira folded her arms, her frustration masking the trembling beneath. And you consider traveling with a branded Omega healer not insubordination? His grin was quick and dangerous. I've done worse. The smirk almost made her forget where they were. Almost. You're impossible. So you keep saying. He offered her a hand up to the carriage. Come on. The sooner we leave, the less chance they have to track us. She hesitated, staring at his outstretched hand. Alphas didn't offer. They commanded. Yet here he was, waiting patiently, his gaze steady and without pressure. Slowly, Ira placed her palm in his. Warmth flared immediately, not from power, but something disarmingly human. He helped her into the carriage, then climbed in after, settling opposite her. The wheels lurched forward, creaking down the muddy road that wound toward the capital. For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them was taut, but not uncomfortable. The countryside passed in muted streaks of green and gray, skeletal trees, fog-drowned hills, the distant glint of watchtowers. Every so often, Ira would catch Kale glancing her way, as if verifying she hadn't disappeared like a dream. She finally broke the quiet. Why do you care about this? About me? Kale leaned back against the worn leather seat. You saved me. That's not a reason. It's enough for me. Not for me. Her tone sharpened. I need the truth. He studied her for a long moment, then said quietly, because I was there, Ira. The night you were exiled. Her breath caught. You. I wasn't supposed to be. His jaw clenched, the faintest muscle twitch betraying regret. The council ordered all commanders to attend the Queen's funeral. But I stayed behind. The king, he wanted reassurance that the healer's punishment would set an example. I stood outside the chamber when they branded you. Ira's vision blurred for a heartbeat, not from tears, but rage. You watched. I told myself it was duty, Cale said, voice rough. That we needed order, that your rebellion threatened the hierarchy. But when they burned your throat, he exhaled slowly. I almost stopped them. Almost, she echoed bitterly. That must have been comforting. I was a coward, he said simply. And I've lived with that every day since. Ira turned to the window, unable to face him. Outside, the fog had thickened, turning the world into shades of silver. You think saving me now erases what you did? No, his voice softened. But maybe it lets me start making it right. She said nothing, afraid her voice would betray her. For miles they rode in silence again, the rhythm of the wheels filling the void where forgiveness refused to live. Eventually, Cale reached into his cloak and withdrew a folded piece of parchment. The edges were charred, the ink smudged, but the royal seal still glimmered faintly. I took this from the archives before I left the capital, he said. It's a fragment from the Queen's final medical record. Ira hesitated before accepting it. Her hands shook as she unfolded the page. The words were written in her own handwriting, the final notes from that cursed night. But someone had added to them, another hand scrawling across the bottom. Subject responded to harmonic resonance before failure. Hypothesis confirmed, omega frequency capable of destabilizing corruption. Requires refinement. Ira's heart pounded. This isn't mine. Cale nodded grimly.
No.
It's your old mentor's, healer Corvin Mallon. She felt the name like a knife between her ribs. He's dead. He was declared dead, Cale corrected. But his laboratory's been sealed under royal order for 3 years. No one allowed entry. Her gaze snapped up. You think he created the poison? I think he perfected it, Cale said. And if he's alive, he's still experimenting. Ira folded the page, fighting the surge of nausea. He taught me everything I know. He said healing was sacred. That, her voice broke, that it should never be used to harm. Then maybe he changed, Cale said gently. Maybe grief or ambition made him forget. Or maybe someone made him forget, she whispered. The council always feared his theories. They called him a dreamer. Cale's expression darkened. Dreams can be dangerous things. They rode until dusk. When they stopped at a roadside inn, the place smelled of wet hay and old ale, but it was the only shelter for miles. Cale ordered them food and a single room, much to Ira's annoyance. I can sleep on the floor, she said, glaring at the single narrow bed. He arched a brow. You healed me naked from the waist up, but draw the line at sharing a mattress? That was medical, she snapped. Then think of this as trieb, he said, kicking off his boots and sitting on the edge. You take the pillow side. She grumbled, but took it. The mattress was lumpy, the air cold, and yet, lying there in the dim light, inches away from the man who had once signed her exile, she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt that invisible tether hum between them. Ira, Cale said softly into the dark. If you could go back, would you still try to heal her? She didn't answer for a long time. Then, quietly, yes. Even knowing it would destroy you? Yes, she whispered. Because that's what healers do. We try, even when trying breaks us. Cale was silent for a moment. Then, so softly she almost didn't hear it, he said, then maybe the world needs more broken people like you. Ira turned her head toward him, ready to snap something sharp. But the look in his eyes, raw, unguarded, stole the words from her tongue. For the first time since her exile, she didn't feel like a ghost. The capital of Altharan rose like a mirage from the mist. Its alabaster spires caught the morning light and scattered it in shards across the valley, dazzling and cold. The banners along the gate towers fluttered crimson and silver, the colors of the royal crest. From a distance, the city looked untouched by ruin or corruption. Up close, Ira could see the cracks. The cobbled roads leading to the main gate were littered with refugees and soldiers. Smoke coiled from chimneys that hadn't been cleaned in weeks. The air smelled of ash and tension. This was not the shining seat of order she remembered. This was a city holding its breath. Ira's fingers clenched the edge of the carriage window. She had sworn she would never return. Now here she was, an outlaw crossing back into the place that had branded her. Cale rode beside the carriage on horseback, his presence alone enough to make the gate guards straighten to attention. He carried himself like a storm barely contained by armor, commanding, unyielding. The guards saluted before their eyes widened in recognition. "Commander Draven," one stammered. We thought you were killed in the northern skirmish." "Reports were exaggerated," Cale said evenly. "I require immediate passage to the palace. Official matter." The guard hesitated. "And the passenger?" Ira lowered the hood of her cloak slowly, revealing her face. The guard blanched. "By the gods." "She's with me," Cale interrupted sharply. "You'll record no name. You saw no mark." The guard swallowed hard and stepped aside. The gates groaned open, admitting them into the city. Inside, Altherin was both familiar and alien. The polished marble streets, the gilded windows, the towering statues, all the same. But the air felt heavy, the people quieter. Ira noticed the way Omegas averted their eyes when passing Alphas, the way market stalls stopped serving when soldiers walked by. The divide had widened since she left. The city's harmony was gone. Cale dismounted once they reached the inner district. "We'll go on foot from here." Ira stepped out, her legs unsteady from more than travel. "Where?" "The archives first," he said. "If Corvin's research still exists, that's where we'll find the truth." As they walked, Ira pulled her hood lower. Every street held ghosts. She could almost hear the echo of her own voice in the corridors she once sang through, the young, idealistic apprentice who believed healing could change the world. That girl was gone. The archives sat near the palace's western wall, an austere building guarded by silence. When Cale flashed his insignia, the gatekeeper, an elderly beta, bowed and unlocked the iron doors. Inside, rows of marble pillars stretched toward a vaulted ceiling. The air smelled of parchment and candle wax. Scribes whispered across desks like ghosts cataloging memories. Ira followed Cale through the maze of shelves until they reached the restricted wing. He motioned for her to wait while he dealt with the sentry. "I need access to the sealed records of Master Healer Corvin Malin," Cale said. "Authorized by the Northern Command." The sentry's brows knitted. "Those records are classified under royal decree." "Then you can tell His Majesty I overruled him," Cale said, voice calm but edged with steel. The sentry swallowed. "Commander, even you." Ira stepped forward, her patience frayed. "You'll either open that door, or I'll burn through it." Both men turned to her, startled. Cale arched an eyebrow. "That's not exactly diplomatic." "I've been diplomatic for 3 years," she said. "It got me branded." Something in her tone must have convinced the sentry. With a nervous glance at Cale, he unlocked the gate and fled. The chamber beyond was dark, lined with glass cases and dust. It had the stale air of a tomb. On the far wall hung a cracked sigil, Corvin Malin's seal. Ira's breath hitched. She had stood here once before, as his apprentice. Back then, the room had smelled of lavender and ink. Now it smelled of dust and rot. Cale lit a lantern and set it on the central table. "Start wherever you need." She moved automatically, scanning shelves of journals and scrolls. Most were ordinary medical treatises, diagrams of anatomy, the occasional note on harmonic healing. But then she found a book that made her blood run cold. Its spine was burned. The cover, once white, was blackened at the edges. The title read, "Resonance and Ruin." Her hand shook as she opened it. The first page was written in Corvin's unmistakable script. Harmony requires imbalance to thrive. To heal perfectly is to deny evolution. True unity can only be achieved through transformation. Kale leaned over her shoulder, reading silently. His frown deepened. This sounds like heresy. It's worse, Ira said. It's theory. She flipped further, each line darker than the last. Shadow essence reacts violently with healing frequencies. Purposeful exposure may result in hybridization. He was experimenting with corruption, Kale said grimly, weaponizing it. And using Omega energy as the catalyst, Ira whispered. He believed the union of destruction and healing would create something stronger. Kale's expression hardened, and he tested it on the Queen. Ira snapped the book shut, heart pounding. He used me. He used my song. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. It all made sense now. The way the poison had twisted her melody back on itself, how her healing had turned lethal. She'd been the weapon and never known it. Kale placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. Then we expose him. Before she could reply, a soft creak echoed through the corridor. Both of them tensed. The door to the chamber stood ajar, and someone was watching. A figure in dark robes stepped inside, moving with serpentine grace. His face was hidden beneath a hood, but his voice, smooth, precise, froze Ira's blood. Still breaking into places you shouldn't, my dear apprentice. Ira's knees nearly gave way. Corvin. Kale drew his blade instantly, steel singing.
He's alive.
Corvin lifted his head, and the flickering light revealed what was left of his face. Half human, half shadow, the corruption pulsed beneath his skin like liquid night. Alive, he said with a cruel smile.
No.
Enlightened. Ira took a trembling step back. What have you done to yourself? Perfected what they called imperfection, he said. The shadow didn't destroy me. It completed me. Kale's stance tightened. You poisoned your own queen. Corvin tilted his head. Sacrifice. Evolution demands it. Ira's voice broke. You murdered her. I freed her, he corrected coldly. From the limits of flesh, from the tyranny of division. Alphas, omegas, meaningless. Soon, all will be shadow. Unified. Strong. Madness, Kale growled. Corvin's grin widened. Madness?
No, commander.
Vision. He raised his hand, and the lantern's flame guttered out. Darkness rolled through the room like a tide. Kale lunged forward, but the shadow caught him mid-step, slamming him into a shelf. Ira shouted, reaching for her magic, but Corvin's voice wrapped around her like a noose. Sing for me, Ira. Let me show you what your gift was meant to be. His shadow surged, blotting out the light. The lantern burst, its shards scattering like fallen stars. Darkness consumed the archive chamber, thick, living, suffocating. It wasn't the absence of light. It was presence. A hungry, whispering thing that seemed to breathe. Ira could barely see Kale, pinned beneath a fallen shelf, shadows coiling around him like serpents. She lunged forward, only for Corvin's voice to slice through the dark. Still you rush to save others, Ira. Even now. Always the martyr. She froze. His tone was the same as it had been in the old teaching halls, calm, measured, instructive, but the warmth was gone. In its place was a chilling conviction. You used me, she whispered. You made me kill her. Corvin's silhouette drifted closer, the lamplight from the outer hall catching the edges of his face, half human, half shimmering void. His eyes glowed faintly violet, twin galaxies collapsing inward. I made you, he echoed. No, child. I revealed you.
You were born for this.
Do you think I didn't see it? The way your song resonated with pain, how even the dying turned to look when you sang. You call it healing. I call it transcendence. You call it murder. Kale's voice was raw, defiant even as the shadow pressed him deeper into the ground. The darkness recoiled slightly from his tone, alpha power meeting its equal. Let her go, Malin. Corvin's smile was almost sad.
Ah, commandé Dravant.
I see the rumors of your stubbornness were not exaggerated. He flicked a hand, and the shadow snapped like a whip, slamming Kale back into the wall. Ira screamed, diving toward him, but the air between them rippled. The shadows condensed, forming a barrier, translucent, pulsing with dark veins. She hit it with both palms and felt her own energy recoil as though she'd struck a mirror made of her own magic. "Don't struggle," Corvin said softly. "You'll only make it worse." Her vision blurred with fury. "You think you can twist my gift again?" "I don't need to twist it," he said, stepping closer. "I only need to remind you what it really is." He raised a hand. The shadows obeyed like loyal pets, spiraling upward and weaving into a single thread of black light that hung between them, humming with a frequency she felt deep in her bones. "I've refined the poison since your failure," Corvin said conversationally. "It no longer kills instantly. It connects. The subject becomes receptive. Open. Imagine an army of alphas and omegas united by one heartbeat, one rhythm. No conflict. No hierarchy. Pure harmony." Ira's stomach turned. "You mean enslavement." "I mean unity," he corrected. "But language was always your weakness. You feel in song, not in words." He extended the dark thread toward her, its vibration matching the pitch of her heartbeat. For a moment, it almost sounded beautiful, like the first note of a symphony she'd forgotten. Her breath hitched as the frequency wrapped around her chest, resonating with something buried deep inside. Kale's roar shattered the illusion. The sound wasn't human, more beast than man, and it cracked through the dark like lightning. The barrier faltered. Iris seized the opening, summoning her energy, letting it flare outward in a burst of pale silver light. The resonance thread snapped, shrieking as it disintegrated. Corvin staggered back, eyes blazing. "Still defiant. Still me," she hissed, thrusting her palms forward. Her energy slammed into his chest, throwing him across the room. He hit the far wall, the impact shaking dust from the ceiling. Kale tore free of the remaining shadow and staggered upright, breathing hard. "You good?" "I've been worse," she said, wiping blood from her lip. "He's stronger than before." Kale flexed his claws, his wolf instincts bleeding through his control. "Then we don't let him run this time." But Corvin only laughed, the sound echoing through the vault like shattering glass. "Run? Oh, Ira. I came here for you." The shadows behind him rippled, and from their depths stepped three figures. Soldiers, but wrong. Their armor was fused to their skin, their eyes black voids threaded with light. They moved in eerie unison, like puppets bound to a single string. "Shadow-bound," Kale muttered, voice tight. "He's making them now." "Refining them," Corvin said proudly. "Their loyalty is absolute. No fear. No pain. Only purpose." Ira's magic flared instinctively, silver light against their void-black aura. "You turned them into slaves." "Into soldiers," he corrected. "The first of the new order." Kale didn't wait for more. He moved, faster than thought, slamming into the nearest shadow-bound soldier with enough force to crack stone. The impact sent ripples through the darkness, but the creature didn't fall. It dissolved, then reformed behind him, blade flashing. "Kale!" Ira shouted. He ducked, but the sword grazed his arm, slicing through armor like paper. Shadow spilled from the wound instead of blood, black tendrils that pulsed and hissed. "Don't let it in," Ira cried, rushing toward him. Her hands glowed as she pressed them to his arm. The darkness writhed, resisting her touch. "It's adapting," she whispered. "It's learning." "Then teach it fear," Kale snarled. Ira gritted her teeth, channeling her magic deeper, singing under her breath, a broken melody, fragments of the lullaby she'd once used to heal children. Her voice cracked mid-note, but the sound cut through the air like silver thread. The shadows recoiled, screeching in frequencies only her magic could hear. Kale's wound closed. Corvin hissed, eyes narrowing. "So the broken song still works." Ira met his gaze, defiance burning through her exhaustion. "It's not broken. It's mine." Her next note wasn't gentle. It rose like a battle cry. The entire chamber vibrated as her power surged outward, colliding with Corvin's shadow. Where their energies met, the air screamed, light and dark twisting, biting, clawing. Kale dove between them, slamming his sword into the ground. The steel glowed with his alpha power, forming a barrier of molten gold. When the energy finally dispersed, the chamber was in ruins. Shelves lay scattered. Scrolls burned with ghostly fire. Corvin stood near the exit, his form flickering between solid and smoke. "You can't stop this," he said, voice distorted. "You've seen what's coming. The world will devour itself without transformation." Ira took a step forward, trembling but unbowed. "Then I'll remind it how to heal." For the first time, Corvin's confidence cracked. "You'll fail again." "Maybe," she said softly, "but not alone." Kale stood beside her, golden eyes blazing. Together, they looked like the calm before a storm. Corvin's expression hardened. "Then you've chosen your side. Pray it's the right one." The shadows swallowed him whole. When they cleared, he was gone, along with his soldiers. The silence that followed was deafening. Ira's legs gave out, and Kale caught her before she hit the ground. Her pulse fluttered against his fingers, alive, but weak. She stared at the place where her mentor had vanished, eyes wet with fury and grief. "He's going to unleash it," she whispered. "The perfected poison." Kale's grip tightened. "Then we stop him." "How?" she breathed. "He's beyond anything I can." "No," Kale interrupted, his tone quiet but fierce. "Not you. We." For a moment, their gazes locked, the broken Omega and the wounded Alpha, both scarred by the same man, the same system. Between them, something wordless and dangerous began to form. Not dominance, not submission. Balance. Outside, the bells of Altherin began to ring. But it wasn't for worship or celebration. It was alarm. The capital was under attack. The bells of Altherin howled through the dawn like the voice of an ancient god. Their echo bounced off the marble towers, setting crows scattering from the cathedral spires. By the time Ira and Kale burst from the shattered archives, the city was already chaos, smoke clawing its way into the sky, people flooding the streets in panic. "What did he do?" Ira gasped, staring toward the horizon. Kale's gaze followed hers, and his face hardened. Over the outer walls, the sky had turned black. Not cloud black, but ink, alive, rippling, spreading. And moving within it hundreds of shapes. Soldiers, twisted and wrong. Each step they took spread more darkness across the stone, like an infection made flesh. "The shadow-bound army," Kale said grimly. "He's unleashed them." Ira's stomach dropped. "He couldn't have made that many." "He didn't need to," Kale said. "They infect others." A nearby scream punctuated his words. A guard's desperate cry cut short as tendrils of darkness wrapped around his limbs, sinking into his veins. Within moments, his eyes turned black, and he turned his sword on his own. Ira's breath came shallow. "Kale, it's spreading too fast." He caught her hand. "Then we move faster." They ran. Down through the crumbling archways, through streets filled with smoke and confusion. Everywhere Ira looked, chaos had taken root. Families fleeing, soldiers trying and failing to organize, the air vibrating with corrupted energy. The capital, her city, was dying. As they reached the plaza near the Healer's Hall, a squad of royal guards blocked their path. "Commander Draven," one shouted, relief flickering in his eyes. "Orders, sir?" Kale didn't hesitate. "Evacuate the lower districts and seal the bridges. Nothing crosses the river. That's our containment line." The guard saluted and sprinted off, shouting orders. Kale turned to Ira. "We need to find the king." She shook her head. "No. We need to find the heart of the corruption. Corvin wouldn't strike randomly. He's heading for the palace." Kale's jaw tightened. "Then that's where we go." They pushed forward together. Every step was a battle, shadows lunging from alleys, corrupted soldiers clawing at the air, whispers echoing in the back of Ira's mind like a melody she couldn't quite silence. She recognized it. Corvin's resonance. His new song. He was singing to her. At one point, they passed a fallen healer, an Omega woman clutching her own throat, black veins spreading beneath her skin. Without thinking, Ira dropped to her knees beside her. "Don't," Kale warned. "You'll get pulled in. I can help her." Her hands glowed silver as she pressed them to the woman's chest. The corruption fought her, lashing out like barbed wire, but Ira sang, soft, steady, coaxing rather than forcing. The woman gasped, the darkness retreating inch by inch until her breathing steadied. When it was done, Ira sagged, trembling from the effort. Kale hauled her back to her feet. "You can't save everyone." "I know," she said, voice raw, "but I can save someone." He didn't argue. By the time they reached the palace gates, the front courtyard had become a battlefield. The royal guard was losing ground fast, overwhelmed by shadows that poured through the streets like living smoke. Above, the banners of Altherin burned. A horn sounded, long, low, and mournful. The gates swung open to reveal the king himself, armored and grim, flanked by what remained of his elite guard. "Commander Draven," he called. "Where is the enemy's general?" Kale saluted. "Inside the palace, Your Majesty. He's targeting the sanctum." The king's eyes darkened. "Then we hold this ground."
Go.
"Stop him." Ira's breath hitched. "You'll die if you stay." A faint, broken smile crossed the king's face. "If death buys you one more minute to stop him, then I die gladly." Kale gripped his shoulder. "Hold fast, sire. We'll end this." Together, he and Ira ran into the palace. The corridors were half light, half nightmare. Portraits peeling from the walls, floors slick with shadow residue. Every sound echoed, distorted, as if the building itself were breathing. They moved cautiously, Ira's light shimmering in her palms, Kale's sword gleaming gold. When they reached the throne room doors, they found them already open. Corvin stood at the far end, before the twin thrones, the queen's empty seat draped in mourning cloth. He looked almost peaceful, surrounded by a halo of pulsing shadow that reached up to the ceiling like a cathedral of darkness. "You're too late," he said calmly. "The transformation has begun." Ira stepped forward. "You're destroying everything she built." Corvin's gaze flicked toward the queen's throne. "She built walls. I'm breaking them." Kale raised his blade. "Then you'll break on me." "Always so direct," Corvin mused. "You alphas never change. But you, Ira, you've evolved." "Evolved," she spat. "You turn people into monsters." "Into bridges," he corrected. "Between light and dark. Between Alpha and Omega. Look around you. Even now, your magic feeds on mine." He wasn't wrong. Her silver light pulsed in rhythm with his dark aura, like two sides of the same heartbeat. The resonance vibrated through her, deep and painful. "No," she whispered. "I refuse your harmony." Corvin extended a hand, and a tendril of darkness snaked toward her. "Refusal is meaningless. You are my harmony." Kale moved first, slicing through the tendril with his blade. "She's not yours." Corvin's smile turned cold. "Then she's yours." Kale said nothing, but the weight of his stance answered for him. Corvin sighed. Pathetic. He snapped his fingers, and the floor exploded. The shadows surged upward, forming a dozen shadow-bound soldiers. Kale roared, shifting partially, claws gleaming, eyes burning gold, and charged. Steel met shadow, golden sparks flying with every strike. Ira stayed back, focusing on her breathing, on the song beneath the chaos. The resonance hummed at the edge of her senses, Corvin's melody, haunting and seductive. But beneath it, she could hear something else. A counterpoint. Her own rhythm. Weaker, but pure. She closed her eyes and began to sing. The sound started as a whisper, almost lost beneath the battle's din. But as her voice rose, so did the light. Silver at first, then tinged with gold as Kale's energy intertwined with hers. The air thrummed with power. The shadow-bound soldiers faltered, their black eyes flickering. Corvin turned sharply. "No. You can't." but she already had. Her song swelled, each note a blade of light cutting through darkness. Kale fought with renewed fury, his strikes guided by her rhythm. Together, they created something that shouldn't have been possible, harmony born not of obedience, but choice. The shadows began to unravel. Corvin staggered, his aura fracturing. "You think this is victory?" he snarled. "You're still playing my song." Ira's eyes opened, blazing silver.
No.
"I'm rewriting it." She hit the final note, a pure, piercing tone that made the stained glass windows explode outward. The light it released wasn't just illumination. It was revelation. Every corner of the throne room filled with brilliance until the darkness had nowhere left to hide. When the glow faded, Corvin was on his knees. Half his form flickered, the shadow half dissolving like ash in sunlight. The human half wept blood. "You can't stop it," he whispered. "The seed is already sown. Every alpha who's been touched by shadow, every omega who's ever healed one, carries my resonance." Ira stepped closer, trembling with exhaustion. "Then I'll heal that too." Corvin's final smile was almost tender. "You can't heal evolution." His body collapsed into black dust that scattered on the wind. Kale caught Ira as she swayed, her strength spent. He held her close as the last echoes of Corvin's magic faded into silence. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only their shared heartbeat filled the stillness. Outside, the bells of Altherin changed their song. No longer alarm, but mourning, and, perhaps, the first fragile notes of hope. The battle for Altherin ended not with thunder or triumph, but with silence, deep and aching, like the breath drawn after a scream. When Ira awoke, she was lying in a soft bed beneath a canopy of white linen. For a few disoriented seconds, she thought she was back in the healer's hall before everything had fallen apart. Then the scent of smoke and medicine hit her, and she realized she was still alive.
Barely.
Her throat ached, her limbs heavy. The faint shimmer of healing wards flickered around the room, not her work, but someone else's. The sound of low voices drifted through the door, and she recognized one instantly. "Her vitals are stabilizing," said a man, soft-spoken, nervous. "But the energy readings are strange. It's as if the corruption is gone, but replaced with something new." "Monitor it," came Kale's voice, rough with fatigue and command. "If her condition changes, you wake me." Ira tried to sit up. The motion was a mistake. Pain flared behind her eyes, and the world spun. A shadow loomed beside her bed, then solidified into Kale's unmistakable presence. His armor was scorched, his shirt torn, but he looked more alive than she'd ever seen him. "Easy," he murmured, pressing a steady hand to her shoulder. "You've been out for 2 days." Her lips were dry. 2 days. Long enough for half the city to start calling you a saint and the other half to call you a curse. Ira let out a weak laugh. "So, no change then." Kale's smile was fleeting, but real. "You burned out your core trying to counter Corvin's resonance. The healers thought you wouldn't make it. And yet," she rasped, "you still look worse than I do." He glanced down at himself, the bandaged forearm, the bruises. Occupational hazard. The silence that followed was thick with things unsaid. Through the window, she could see the palace gardens below, blackened trees, scorched fountains, healers moving among the wounded. The air shimmered with the aftermath of magic that refused to fully die. "Did we win?" she asked finally. Kale hesitated. "We survived." She turned her head sharply. "That's not an answer." He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Corvin's gone, but his warning wasn't empty. The shadow didn't vanish, it just changed. Some soldiers still show traces of it, but it's dormant, like a scar under the skin. And the council—" "Let me guess," she said bitterly. "They're calling for containment. They're calling for your head," he admitted quietly. Ira's heart sank. "Of course they are." "Don't," Kale said, his tone sharper than usual. "Don't make it sound like it's right." She met his gaze. His eyes, molten gold even in the dim light, held a storm she didn't have the strength to weather. "They're afraid of what you did," he said. afraid of what you can do. But they can't deny what happened. You saved the city, Ira. You stopped a war that was already lost. She shook her head weakly. I didn't stop anything. I just delayed it. Cale sat beside her bed, his armor creaking. Then we delay it again. And again. Until something better replaces it. His words settled deep, like the first warmth after frost. For a long moment, she just watched him. The lines of exhaustion, the way his jaw flexed when he was thinking.
He looked more human now.
Less legend, more man. You sound like someone who believes in hope, she said softly. Not hope, Cale replied.
Choice.
Before she could respond, the door opened, and a man in royal blue stepped inside. The sight of him made Ira's breath catch. King Aldrin, older than she remembered, his beard streaked with silver, his eyes hollow with loss. The last time she'd seen him, he'd stood over her as she was branded. Your Majesty, Cale said, rising instantly. The king waved him off. At ease, Commander. He crossed the room slowly, his gaze fixed on Ira. You have my kingdom's gratitude, Healer Vale. Her mouth went dry. I'm surprised I still have your attention. You have more than that, he said. You have my apology. She blinked. Apology. Aldrin lowered himself into the chair opposite her bed. When my queen died, I sought someone to blame. The council gave me your name, and I accepted it. It was easier than facing my own failure. Iris said nothing. She didn't trust her voice not to crack. I know now that Corvin was the true hand behind her death, the king continued, and that your power, your voice, was the only thing that kept her alive as long as it did. Iris stared down at her bandaged hands. An apology won't unmake the scar. No, Aldrin said quietly. But perhaps we can make it mean something. Cale glanced between them, cautious. What are you suggesting, sire? The king's expression hardened. The world has changed. The people saw what Omega Healing could do when united with Alpha Strength. I intend to rebuild the healing order, not divided by caste, but joined. Healers, warriors, leaders, all trained together. If the council refuses, I'll dissolve it. Cale's eyebrows rose. That will start a war inside your own court. Then it's time one was fought for the right reasons, Aldrin said. But I need both of you to stand with me. Ira's heart stumbled. You want me back in the palace? I want you to lead it, he said. A new order. The Academy of Balance. The name caught in her throat like a prayer.
She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe.
The man who had condemned her now offered her the chance to build something she'd only ever dreamed of. Cale watched her, waiting. She saw the silent question in his eyes. Do you trust him? Ira thought of the Queen's final breath, of the war that had nearly consumed them, of Corvin's haunting words. You can't heal evolution. She met the king's gaze. I'll do it, but on one condition. Name it. I'm not doing this under the crown, she said. Not as your servant, as your equal. Aldrin studied her for a long, heavy moment. Then slowly he nodded.
Done.
Cale exhaled, a faint smirk tugging at his mouth. You always didn't know how to terrify powerful men. Occupational hazard, she murmured. The king rose. Then it settled. The academy will open within the month. The world must see that harmony isn't a myth. As he left, Ira leaned back against the pillows, her head spinning. Cale lingered beside her bed, arms folded. You realize what you just agreed to? Yes, she said faintly. And I'm terrified. Good, he said. Means you're thinking clearly. She looked up at him, her voice softer. Are you staying? He didn't answer right away. Then, where else would I be? The silence between them stretched again, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. Outside, the city stirred with a slow rhythm of rebuilding. The shadows had receded, leaving scars, but also soil. And from soil, things grew. As the sun set over Altherin, painting the sky in gold and crimson, Ira whispered the words she hadn't dared believe in for years. I can fix this. Cale smiled, not mocking, but reverent. This time, he said, I believe you. The weeks that followed were a blur of motion, rebuilding, and reluctant hope. Altherin, the city that had nearly drowned in shadow, began to breathe again. The streets still bore the scars, blackened stone, shattered glass, burned banners, but amidst it all, the people worked. Alphas and Omegas side by side, mending, cleaning, and guarding. For the first time in memory, the lines that had divided them seemed thinner. The city itself hummed differently now, quieter, like an instrument tuned to a new key. Ira stood on the balcony of the newly repaired Healer's Hall, overlooking the courtyard below. The space was alive with movement, apprentices in pale robes training beside armored soldiers, sharing lessons, laughter, and sweat. The sound of it filled her chest with a strange, fragile pride. The Academy of Balance. The name had been her idea, though she still wasn't sure she deserved it. The bell tower chimed, echoing through the air. It was a clear, steady tone, her tone. They'd forged the new bell using a fragment of her old healer's sigil, melted and reforged in silver. The sound wasn't just a call to study, it was a promise. The promise that even what was once broken could be remade into something whole. She pressed her hands against the railing, feeling the hum of life around her. "Still think I'm cursed?" she murmured to the wind. "Sometimes cursed things make the best blessings." Kale's voice drifted from behind her. She didn't need to turn to know he was there. His presence had become as constant as her own heartbeat, steady, grounding, infuriatingly unshakable. He stepped up beside her, dressed not in armor today, but in the dark uniform of the Academy's instructors. The insignia at his collar bore both Alpha and Omega sigils intertwined. It suited him. Balanced strength and restraint, command and care. "You look tired," he said softly. She smirked. "Comes with trying to rebuild an entire order while dodging assassination attempts from the council." He chuckled, the sound low and warm. "You make it sound like a hobby." "It's starting to feel like one." She glanced sideways at him. "How are the recruits?" He exhaled, leaning against the railing. Terrified.
Proud. Confused.
Half of them still think they'll explode if they spar with someone of another caste. And the other half? Already proving them wrong. His eyes followed a pair of students practicing harmonic combat below, one channeling energy, the other redirecting it in perfect rhythm. "You were right. They can learn balance." Ira tilted her head. "Was that an admission?" "Don't get used to it," he said dryly, but his mouth twitched with a smile. A comfortable silence settled between them. For once, neither of them felt the need to fill it. They simply watched. The light, the people, the city learning how to live again. After a moment, Ira said quietly, "The council's still out there." "I know. They won't forgive this." "Then we don't ask them to." She looked up at him, searching his face. "You really believe this will work? That we can unmake centuries of fear with a handful of students?" He turned to her, gold eyes steady. "No," he said. "I believe you can." The words caught her off guard. For all the weeks they had worked side by side, rebuilding halls, negotiating with guilds, training soldiers, he'd never said it outright. He'd trusted her with his life, but belief, that was rarer. Her throat tightened. "You shouldn't believe in me that much." "I tried not to," he admitted. "Didn't work." Her laugh broke the heaviness. Stubborn Alpha, reckless Omega. They stood like that for a while, two survivors trying to remember what peace was supposed to feel like. Below, the students began to sing during their drills, a tradition Ira had revived. The melody wasn't hers, not fully, but she recognized its roots. It was theirs, the same song she had sung in the throne room, reshaped by a dozen new voices. "Do you hear that?" Kale asked. She nodded slowly. "Harmony." He smiled faintly. "Thought you didn't believe in it." "I didn't," she said. "Until now." The door behind them opened, and a young healer ran out, breathless. "Master Vale. Commander Draven. You need to see this." They followed him down to the courtyard where a group of new apprentices stood, surrounding a boy no older than 15. His hands glowed faintly, not silver, not gold, but a soft, shifting hue between the two. Ira knelt beside him. What's your name? Lien, he said shyly. I was practicing the resonance exercise and it just happened. She extended her hand. May I? He nodded. She touched his palm, and the light spread, neither alpha power nor omega energy, but something entirely new. Balanced.
Whole.
Kale crouched beside her, his eyes widening. He's harmonized. Ira's heart fluttered. Completely. Lien looked between them, uncertain. Is that bad? Ira smiled through tears she didn't realize were falling.
No, Lien.
It's the future. The courtyard erupted in murmurs as others gathered around, watching the boy who had become living proof of everything they'd fought for. Balance wasn't theory anymore. It was real. It was growing. Later, after the commotion had died down, Kale found Ira back on the balcony, watching the sun sink below the horizon. The sky was painted in streaks of amber and violet, shadow and light intertwined. You were right, he said quietly. About what? About fixing it. She turned toward him, eyes glimmering. I didn't fix it. We did. Kale's gaze softened. Still the same Ira Vale. Can't take credit even when you rebuild the world. And still the same Kale Draven, she countered. Can't stop following me into trouble.
He grinned.
Wouldn't dream of it. The wind shifted, carrying the faint echo of the students' song up to the balcony. For the first time since the Queen's death, Ira didn't flinch at the sound. It didn't hurt anymore. It healed. Kale reached for her hand. So, what now? Ima looked out at the horizon, at the city she had once called a grave and now called home. Now, she said softly, we teach them to sing. And as night fell over Altherin, the city didn't sleep. It hummed, alive with new resonance, light twined with shadow, two halves finally learning to move as one. For the first time in generations, harmony wasn't a myth. It was a beginning. In the end, it wasn't power that saved their world, but the choice to trust again. Ira, the fallen healer who once carried only shame, found her redemption not in perfection, but in the courage to sing, even when the world called her broken. And Kale, the commander who thought he'd lost everything, learned that strength isn't about dominance. It's about standing beside the one you swore to protect, even when it means breaking every law written by fear. Together, they didn't just heal a kingdom, they rewrote the song of what it means to be whole. If their story reached something in you, that quiet part that still believes love can rise from ruin, then stay with us. Subscribe for more dark fantasy love stories, where light and shadow fall in love, where broken things remember how to shine. Because every ending is just another beginning waiting to be sung.